Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Now, I want to stay on the news business just for a second because those of you who listen to me on this program and the many other programs I do know that I really, really, really have a problem with bad journalism. And it's not just because of the partisanship, and it's not just because of the bias. I'm talking about just doing a bad job because this is a business. Hello, I'm trying to get your attention. And so is everybody else in the news media. Well, at least they're supposed to be. I become more and more convinced every day that there are people, especially at the mainstream media outlets, who have no interest in growing their audience. They just have a partisan bent. And they're not interested in, they don't seem to understand that this is a business. At some point, even the corporations that own some of the mainstream media outlets, who use those mainstream media outlets as a loss leader to promote lobbying efforts. In other words, if you're Comcast and you own all the NBC properties, you use CNBC and you use NBC Nightly News to promote the messages that the bureaucrats that you have to deal with at Comcast, and there are quite a few, want to hear. Comcast makes its money on broadband. You know how easily a bureaucrat in D.C. can screw with the broadband program with all the land rights you need and the technical licenses? They can really screw with that. And Comcast NBC isn't stupid. They know that. And they've been using CNBC and NBC Nightly News and MS Now, and I know they spun off CNBC and MS Now, whatever. You can believe that if you want. When a company spins some things off, they still have tremendous influence, even though it's an independently traded stock. I can tell you a lot of examples of that another time. But they use these outlets and have used them for years as a de facto lobbying effort. And even though they lose money on them a lot of the time, they don't necessarily lose money on CNBC, but even though they do lose money or don't make that much money on it, they save themselves maybe billions in lobbying. So whatever, fine. That's what they use it for. That's why I think they don't really care about this. But my biggest example is what we're dealing with right now with this incredible revelation we got from DNI Tulsi Gabbard in the last couple of days, showing that 2019 impeachment process against President Trump was made up out of whole cloth. As many of us suspected, and as some people like at the Federalist immediately blew the whistle on, and that's great. But now we have the documents to prove that the so-called whistleblower was completely lying, almost tried to recant the lie, et cetera, but they just completely, basically cannot contrive this from the beginning, got it all the way through. Now, you're not hearing about any of this in the mainstream media. They've completely ignored the story. That's bad business. Even if you're MS Now and you know all your viewers are lefty Trump haters, even if you're the other mainstream media outlets where you think most of your viewers are Trump haters, that doesn't matter. It's a fascinating, clickable story. It's a lot more interesting than the accusations in the first impeachment thing. I mean, it was so contrived. President Trump made a phone call and he made a comment about helping him in his election, which was clearly just a comment, never actually talked about. I mean, it was such a contrived thing. It wasn't a sex scandal. It wasn't a murder. It wasn't a big cover-up. I mean, that was their choice for the big thing that would get people outraged. People walking down the street saying, President Trump said something on the phone. I'm really upset. I'm like, come on. How silly was that? That story wasn't interesting, actually. The impeachment process was, but the whole scandal wasn't. But this is interesting. And even if you are trying to serve up the kinds of things that the Trump haters want to hear, you could still do this story. You could do it. Hey, look what Gabbard's doing. She's trying to say that whole thing wasn't true. We think it was. And just pound the table about it. It's a clickable story. It's a watchable story. This is a major scandal one way or the other. It's either a scandal because of what I believe is the truth, was that it was absolutely connived from the beginning, a contrivance from the beginning, or it's a scandal that the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has released documents that make it seem like it. Either way, it's a really cool story. One that would get you some more clicks. One that would get you higher ratings. But no, let's talk about the Pope. And I got to tell you, I don't think most Americans give a darn about what the Pope has to say ever. I mean, I've lived in this country my whole life. I'm 55 years old. And the lack of interest in what the Pope says has precipitously gotten larger over my lifetime. I remember when I was 8 years old and the two popes died back to back, Paul VI and then John Paul I. They preempted all broadcasts on all TV. Like, that was the end of cartoons for days. They would never do that now. They would do it maybe on CNN for a second, but they would never do. I mean, the interest in the Pope is minimal these days. But they think that's a big story. I mean, whatever. Good luck with that. It's not. It's just not. This is a huge story that people should be talking about that is very clickable. You had a contrived plot against Donald Trump for the dumbest thing in the world, too. Like, I mean, even if it was some kind of law that he broke by saying, you should help me with my election, without him actually saying, hey, I want you to say this, that, and the other thing 100 times. You know, he said it. I mean, it was obviously just like a corner of his mouth kind of comment. That's the big scandal. It's not like Watergate covering up a burglary of your opponent's headquarters. It's not like a sex scandal. It's not like the president murdered someone and is trying to cover it. I mean, honestly, it was such a flimsy thing in the beginning, but that's what they went with. And they gummied up the country at a crucial time, 2019. We all know what was going on towards the end of 2019, going into 2020, which was the whole COVID thing. And it was just sad to see. And now we see that it shouldn't have gone anywhere. So there you go. That's a clickable story. If you're a crazy Trump hater, then you're interested in the fact that maybe you want to accuse Gabbard of bringing up these documents either out of context or making them up. Either way, huge story. No coverage in the mainstream media because they're not interested in viewership. They're not really interested in making money. So if you're a shareholder of Comcast NBC, if you're a shareholder of Warner Brothers Discovery, if you're a shareholder at Paramount Skydance, maybe you went at the next shareholders meeting saying, can we just cut these TV stations loose? They don't make as much money. They don't really make money. They don't want to. And their lobbying value is diminishing by the day anyway. Have a nice day.